All right, good afternoon, everyone. Futures Brizio here. It is just after 2 p.m. on Tuesday, September 30th. Hope everybody's having a great day. I actually did record a video yesterday around lunchtime, but I never uploaded it to the channel. I had exported it and got ready, and then I had some Windows upgrades to do on my computer, and anyways, long story, I never got it uploaded. So we're just going to skip yesterday and just really, there's not a heck of a lot has changed in terms of, where we're at with things. Obviously, we got another day of price action under the belt here. But outside of that, things haven't really changed all that much. So we're just going to jump right in here. And as always, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and any questions or comments, leave them down below. As usual, we're going to just talk about price action on the day. And again, just kind of, in the context of the commitment of traders. So let's start with soybean meal. And we'll just go to the overall futures chart, which is what you see here. Um, again, we're in a downtrend here. You can see we've been trending down, especially since about mid to late August here. Here on the daily chart, trending down. And again, if we go and look at the COT, and I've done this several times now, but so I'm not going to rehash everything with COT data. If you're just seeing this video for the first time, you might want to go back and watch a couple of the other ones early on when I started talking about COT data in the last couple of weeks. So again, let's just reset ourselves though. From a commercial standpoint, the commercials reached a negative, an extreme short position in this asset back in late August. And we've since come out of that area, and we're now kind of in this in between, in this white zone here. But overall, I think that's still bearish because the trend is down, and basically until we get price going up inside this green zone, I would say that we're probably still looking at more bearish price action because that was our most recent tap, was into this extreme short area. And usually, again, what happens, not always, but a lot of times what happens with these moves is you may or may not see the move happen right when it comes into this area, but then as it starts to bottom out and starts to come up and out of this area, that's usually when the actual move starts. So for soybean meal, we crossed into this area, and basically we had these couple of green candles, a couple of up weeks. And then we kind of bottomed out here. And then at that point, we were starting to turn lower. And, since then, we did have one up week. But essentially, 5 of the last 6 weeks have been down. And this week is also down. So this, again, is a weekly chart. If we look at it on the daily chart, we can pretty much see the same thing. We zoom out here. Here's the daily chart. This is the COT index indicator I talked about, which pretty much mimics the COT index indicator on the page I just showed you on Insider Week. The only differences with this one is that I also have this one showing the large non-speculators, the large speculators non-commercials, which is the red line. So this blue line is essentially the same as this red line right here, okay? So and you can see kind of how it's come into over extreme short, went up, down, up. And if we come back over here, we pretty much see the same thing here, right? Came out, came up, down, and then up again. So this line's a little bit more aggressive. Well, actually, it's not really because that's a daily chart. If we go to the weekly chart, we see pretty much the same picture, right? Came down, and then up, down, and then up again. All right. So the only difference is, again, on here is I'm showing the red line are your large speculators, like your hedge funds, etc. Whereas the blue line is the commercials, and again, which is the same as this line right here. Okay. So we have that. And so that is for soybean meal. Okay. And so if we move on here, let's take a look at corn, because corn has been a little bit interesting from a price versus COT data here the last several sessions. So if you recall, and we'll get it up here in a second, corn has been in this extreme net long position for a long time, really since, what is this, since late May. Actually, we crossed into this zone in late April, and we were at this extreme area. The COT index was essentially at 100 for many, many weeks. It's come down, and now it's kind of sitting right on the edge of the green and the white zone here. And again, as I just stated before, a lot of times these actual moves in the direction of the COT, where the commercials are, happen later. They don't always happen when they first come into this zone, because as you can see here, this entire time, at least on the weekly chart, even though the COT index was in this extreme long area, the price really trended down all that time. And that is a drawback with this tool, because again, you have to be patient. You have to kind of look long term. And obviously, it doesn't mean you couldn't have traded this downtrend, because obviously this was many, many, many weeks here. This is probably 2 or 3 months right here that the price went down. And yes, obviously there were a couple of positive weeks thrown in here, like any time, right? You get pullback weeks. From starting at this high down to this low, we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 4 weeks where we had green candle, essentially up weeks. But for the most part, the trend clearly was down right from here to here. So now we're starting to come out of here. So let's see now if we finally get this bend higher and have this thing start to actually move higher. Because if we look at the corn, the actual corn chart beyond the weekly chart, here's the daily. And you can see here was that long downtrend I was showing you on the weekly chart. And then we started going higher. We took out what looks to be at least a couple of swing areas here. This one we kind of, we basically broke it, but came up to it. And then we have this one here, which we broke. Now we've got these little swing areas all the way down. We had a gap higher. So basically, but you can see really in the last week or so, because again, this is a daily chart, we've been basically trending down since last week. All right. But theoretically, if you look from this low to where it is now, we have not broken the uptrend. Okay. We have not broken the uptrend. We're just kind of in a corrective mode. We're kind of sitting. We've got kind of this sideways action that led to this high. And that's basically where we're sitting right now. We're basically sitting right here at this area. Okay. So again, this is what I'm talking about with like having a longer term view of this. So here's the hourly chart. And here's that line I just drew. We can push this down. I don't need to see this right now. So here it is on the hourly chart. Okay. So let's see what happens. According to the COT data, this market is due for probably a significant move up. And remember, I also said we also have seasonality in our favor for corn too. Remember, seasonality is just another tool. It's not that you have to have it in confluence, because there are some years where it doesn't track. But if it is in line with the COT data, it's a powerful addition. And you can see here at the the seasonality on corn, we have very strong confluence here that we'll see higher prices on corn basically right through most of the winter from where we are now, essentially starting in August. You can see the bottomed out here. And you can see this is current year in red, and then 5, 10, and 15-year price data. And you can see all these lines are pretty much in confluence here going up. You don't get that very often, which is why I really like corn. This is one of the few markets that, seasonally they do tend to run together. So the bottom line is I'm still bullish corn, even though we've had this push down here the last, basically the last, uh, let's see, since about September 24th. So about the last week, we started going up out of this low, came down, retested this area. So what's next? Well, if we don't have a continued major move down, we do have this huge gap on this chart. I don't know if it's going to come all the way down here and fill this. I guess theoretically it could, but I don't. If we're in a bullish stance, I don't think that will. But who knows? We'll have to keep an eye on it whenever you see gaps on a chart. But putting the gap aside, I do think we are in a bullish stance here, and we just have to wait now. Where is price going to find a bottom and start to turn up? Is it where it is now? I don't know. The market is closing for the day. The grain market's closing, so it's not going to be any other movement on this today. But where's that going to be? We have this swing up here. Or are we going to look for a shorter term time frame swing? Maybe like right here. So again, the bottom line is I'm still bullish on corn, but we just haven't seen this turn higher. But I do think once we get it, based on COT and based on seasonality, if this plays out, we could be looking at really a multi-month run on corn to the upside, not just days or weeks, potentially multi-months running to the upside. Okay, so I am still bullish on corn, even though we've had this downtrend. All right, so let's just see where it goes. All right, so let's move on to Australian dollar. Australian dollar is another one that's been, again, where you have to kind of have to weigh your, your time frames against what the commercials are doing, what the COT data is doing. Okay, so let's take again another look at the Canadian dollar. And so as we can see here, that's the dollar. We got to go to the Canadian dollar. Here we go. So for the Canadian dollar, we are still looking at a negative COT here. And you can see we came into this extreme negative short area here. We came into it back in about 3 weeks ago and bottomed out on September 16th, which was 2 weeks ago. And now we're starting to bend up. And again, I know I keep saying this, a lot of times, although not always, you will see the actual move in the direction of the COT when either we see a bottoming out, in this case, because we're in the short area, bottom out of the index, or when it starts to bend higher and starts to clear this area and starts going back up. So we clearly on the weekly chart are putting in higher highs and higher lows, which is against this. Okay. But if we look here on the this is the 15-minute chart. It's a little bit short of a time frame. Here's the daily chart. And so let's see what happens. It looked like we were starting to go down over the last, week plus. But then the last 3 trading days, which is basically today, yesterday, and Friday, we started moving back up again. We do still have really a major swing low at all this liquidity sitting down here. But again, the COT data is pointing down. So what are we waiting for? Well, if we're following that, then basically we're waiting for, here's the hourly chart. We're waiting for this uptrend to basically turn and start going lower again. Where is that going to happen? Again, this thing has been pretty good about holding swing lows on this whole move up here. If we look at our major swing areas, like here, that holds, price comes down, taps, makes a new high, comes down, holds, makes, new high, comes down, holds the last swing. Here it wicked through. This was probably some news, but it held this area, came back, went up, right? Moved sideways, went up, came down, held the high. Same thing here. Okay. So look where we're at right now though. Okay. We basically have this swing area essentially right here. Actually, I don't want that. That's not the tool I wanted. Let's use the rectangle. And, basically we've got this right here. And this is a 15-minute time frame, so I know short time frame. But if we're looking for a potential shift back in the direction of the COT data, this is the kind of, fine tuning you need to do. All right. If we zoom out a little bit on the 4-hour chart, we have this swing area up here that led to this low. Now we had a secondary swing right here that it breached. But, we also had this swing right here so far as held. Now, if this area breaks and we break this high right here, then, I may just become neutral on this because this is the 4-hour chart and this is a major swing area. But if this area holds, okay, where we are now, this is a critical swing high right here. And you can see prices came down, tried to go higher. If this ends up holding and price comes down and eventually breaks through this zone right here, then we could potentially, see that downtrend start that the COT data is pointing at. So I am still bearish on this, and then the question is, well, what about this whole uptrend right here? You're just going to leave this? No, I mean, although I didn't, you certainly could have traded this to the upside. I mean, if you're just purely technical trading, you could trade this to the upside, but you just want to keep in mind, what the COT, the longer term COT data is telling you, that just be careful. And this is where you can just use technical skills to, if you were going to take this long back here, that, this area here or this area here could be targets, that you could, trade it long, but understanding the bigger picture, we're still expecting lower prices eventually. Okay, where is that going to happen? We'll see. Is it going to be from here? I don't know. The structure to the upside has not been broken yet. Clearly, you can see it has not been broken. But, this is kind of an interesting pattern right here. We have a bearish candle, a bounce off, maybe failing to make another new high right here. So if this area holds, right? And again, this is just pure technical analysis. But if this area holds right here, then, and we come down here and take out this liquidity zone, basically anywhere from this low to this low, that's why I drew it as a rectangle. It's never a precise line. It's always a zone. But, essentially if it breaks through here, then I might be thinking about shorts at that point, go short and put a stop probably just above this swing, because if it comes back and breaks through here, that invalidates it anyways. No need to give yourself more risk. Put it a couple of ticks above this high, about where that blue arrow is, and that's good. All right, so let's see what happens. But right now I'm just sitting on my hands on the Australian dollar until we see what this does. Okay, maybe this will happen. Well, I don't know if it'll happen this afternoon, but maybe during the overnight tonight, Asian session, we get this, or maybe it happens some other time this week. All right, so on to natural gas. And if we look at natural gas from a COT standpoint, we have a more bullish stance on this right now, as I talked about yesterday. Excuse me, I need a drink. I don't know why these charts are taking so long to load. Okay, you can see here we are in a very, very extreme long position on natural gas. We have the COT index at 100%, which is as high as I can go in this graph, right? And again, from a standpoint of these things tend to kick in, for the most part on these uptrends, it tends to be, again, when it reaches that peak and or as it starts to come down. So we haven't really seen, at least on the weekly chart, haven't seen a big switch yet. But I do want to point out, obviously on the daily chart, what we've got going on. We had this low here. Price swung back, failed to put in a new low, and then gapped higher and took out this liquidity and this swing high. So this could be, the start of that uptrend with this higher low right here. We'll see, because, this market can be very volatile. And you can see we had kind of a similar thing happen back here, yet we ended up still going, eventually making new lows. was right here. This is kind of a similar to what we see right here. Price made a new low, came up, tried to come down, failed, broke through this high up here, and then eventually broke and went lower. Okay, but we didn't really have the COT index in our favor at that time. So this was back in May, June of this year. And if we look at our COT index back then, back in like May, June time frame, we were heading down into this short area. So, um, it was a different market then. So let's see what happens. If we get follow through here, 1 hour chart, you can see we did gap higher. I am holding a small long position in this that I took today. And that's based on the COT data. So we'll see. I didn't take it at a really tremendous spot, but I'm going to give it a little breathing room because I took a small position. I want to see what happens with this. But overall, it is pointing to higher prices. And from a seasonality standpoint, at least for the next month or so, we're looking at higher prices from a seasonal standpoint. So that could be a good play, at least through October. All right. And it is up about 1% today. All right. So that's natural gas. And then we'll look at crude oil. Now, crude oil is also showing a net long position. However, the seasonality on crude oil is not as favorable. That's only bullish through early October. Okay. But you can see, we're way up in this, around 100% COT index. And in the last 2 weeks, we're starting to bend lower again. And with the COT, previous COT data, again, most of the time the rallies start to come as it comes out of this area or starts to bend lower out of the area. Okay, so we are starting to bend lower, so let's see if we get any follow through. However, from a pure technical chart standpoint, you can see we're not getting that right now. We had this nice run up, basically from about September 22nd, so about 8 days ago, and it ran up for about 4 days. We had a nice run up here, and then we had this big giant move back down again where we're still going down. Now, so the question becomes, is this just basically a retest of these lows, where the market basically had its first run up, and now it's trying to flush out, people that were long, and you can see it's coming back towards this, $61 and change level right here where it's hit many times off this area. You can see this time, though, when it broke out of here back in a couple of weeks back, it took out all of these swing highs again, but now it's come all the way back down. So the question on this is, if we hold this area and we start to turn the corner and bend back higher again, then crude oil could be a good play to the upside because the COT is in our favor and the seasonality is in our favor, at least for a while. So let's, look at liquidity areas, or market structure change areas where we could, potentially see this thing change. That's where I like to start going to shorter time frames. We basically have, to me, it's kind of like these areas right here, kind of conservatively. So if we come up now and smash back through these little minor swing areas here, then that could be our signal. So I'm going to watch this and see what happens. And again, we had this nice run up, and this very well, like I said, could just be a retest of the lows, flush out anybody that's long, maybe get people in to go short. If we come down and, tag this here, a wick through these lows and people want to think we're going lower, and then have this thing suddenly turn and go higher. So let's see what happens. And let's see, again, we're going to also get an update on the COT data on Friday. But in the interim, this is what we got to work with. All right. So again, COT is bullish for crude oil. We don't have that right now. We're still going down. But You know, let's see if this is just a flush out here, you know, a pump and dump, and then, you know, and then we go turn and go higher or what. And as long as we hold these levels down here, that is very much a possibility. All right, and then lastly on rice, as I've talked about, rice is also in a bullish. Should have done that when I had the grain thing open here, but let's go back over to rice. All right, and you know, basically on rice, we also have bullish COT. We do not have the seasonality in our favor, at least through late October. The seasonality on this is down, but then it starts to turn up. So that may end up being what happens here, because you can see we're still going down. We have not really changed direction on this as of yet. We came out of an extreme short area. We bottomed out here, started coming out of it, and that's when this down leg started back in, what is this, late June. We've been basically in a downtrend from this bottoming of the COT, and now we're up here. We still have not made the turn, but, you know, we might still see lower prices for a while. But, you know, I would say that could very well be that, you know, at some point here, as this, especially once we get an update, if this thing bends lower now and starts coming out of the extreme long area, that could be where prices start to turn. Obviously, like I said, and I pointed this out in the last video, we have no sign of an uptrend starting here. Here's the 4-hour chart. I mean, clearly we're in a downtrend here. You know, you can use a trend line or whatever you want here to kind of show it, moving averages, whatever. But clearly we're still in a downtrend. So we would need to see certainly a bigger shift here back to the upside. I would be keen to look at, like, if I redraw this trend line on the hourly chart, kind of tighten this up a little bit. You know, we have a swing high right here. So, you know, maybe a breach above this area. This is our swing high where we touch the trend line. I like to go like one more swing above that. There is a little swing high here. And we've got this one up here too. So again, you know, any kind of like real strong break up over this trend line and starts taking out these swing areas, that would be our signal that maybe we're making that turn. But we haven't done that yet. And so there's no trade. But again, it is, you know, from the COT standpoint, we are looking for higher prices, and also the seasonality will catch up eventually. The market is closed for the day today. So, all right. So, yeah, that's what I'm looking for corn. Rice. Looking for, you know, higher prices eventually doing something here. Here's another view of seasonal. This is on TradingView. And you can see this is where we're at right now. Okay, that's the blue line with this little blue dot right here where my purple cursor is. That's where we are right now. And this also goes along with the chart I was telling you, where basically we're going to see, you know, neutral to maybe a little bit down in pricing through October, and then we start to curve back up. Okay, so so this is, you know, basically what we're looking at right here. All right, and this is like historical data. Now, this is historical data. This is a different view. Instead of overlaying, you know, 5, 10, 15 year, this is actually just showing you by year. So you'd have to go back to, you know, last year. This is where we're at right now. Okay, so I like the view better on here, okay, than I do on TradingView. So let's look at rice on here. Rough rice, and you'll see what I mean as far as where it looks like it's going to be. So this is what I'm talking about, where we're, generally 5, 10, 15-year history, we have prices generally moving lower through, you can see here, about late October. And then we get a push up, and then prices start to rally. And then once they do rally, they tend to rally through basically through January before they start kind of going sideways again. And you can see in rice in general, there's a lot of sideways action here. You've got basically from February through the end of May, we've got essentially sideways action. And then in here from like August through the end of the year, we basically have sideways action. There's only a couple of times of the year when this, from a seasonal standpoint, seems pretty straightforward. And that's from, basically June, mid-June, early to mid-June through the end of summer. And then maybe a little run up from, essentially November through January, or at least mid-December through January. So, from a seasonal standpoint, this one's it's not like corn, which has very clear seasonal patterns. So I would put more weight in the COT data here, but it is, it is a good thing and probably important to at least be familiar with where you are in the seasonal cycle. Not that seasonals are going to always be the case, because there's so many things that can drive a change in price that breaks a seasonal pattern. Weather conditions, just demand issues, crop conditions, things like that can just totally blow up the seasonal data. Okay, so at the end of the day, the COT data and the actual price action and market structure is more important, but I do think it's important to at least be aware of what the seasonal data is, especially if it's consistent. So with the COT data and the price action. All right. So anyways, yeah, so that's it. We got to get back here. Close this out. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's it. So that's where we stand on everything right now. Like I said, I will make sure I upload this video. Obviously, if you're watching it, I uploaded it. I apologize. I did not post the video yesterday, but I said at this point, it's old history. I think the only thing that really kind of played out from yesterday was the continuation of soybean meal down, which yesterday wasn't exactly sure. But outside of that, the trends that we have here have pretty much held. Not really much has changed since yesterday. All right. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. Make sure you smash that like button on the way out. Subscribe to the channel. Questions, comments, leave them down below. Anything on this COT or price action, let me know. I am traveling tomorrow through early next week. High probability I will not be posting any new videos. If I do, they'll be quick ones. We'll just have to see. But, like I said, from a COT standpoint, nothing's really changing until after the Friday report anyways. We'll see where we're at. I did just kind of show you all these levels that I'm looking for potentially continuing the COT trends. So those are probably not going to change. So you've got a pretty good baseline to, what potentially is coming up here. So, all right. So I'll leave it there. If I don't talk to you, have a great rest of the week. And if I will be watching the YouTube channel. So if you do have any questions or comments, just leave them in there. And I will reply either way, even if I'm not active making videos. All right. So take care, guys. Have a good rest of your day. And look forward to talking to you all soon.